In addition to our agreed lineup of participants, I'm delighted to have a bonus participant, and that's Gerard O'Farrell. Gerard O'Farrell has worked extensively in the motor import and retail sector for over 35 years. He's head of the car division of OEM Group, who are importers of Jaguar Land Rover Ireland, and director of Spirit Motor Group, who are operating 8 dealerships across South and West Dublin. And Gerard is a former president of SIMI. Gerard, you're very welcome this afternoon, and thanks for joining us. A common theme throughout the sessions this morning and yesterday were around transportation, electric vehicles, hybrids, and the part they play in meeting climate change targets. But one of I suppose the questions that come up now and again is around range anxiety, and some people are reluctant to make that leap into an electric vehicle due to range anxiety. Can you sort of clarify what range anxiety is, and should we be worried about it?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I'm delighted to be here with you today. And I think it's a very topical issue because we're now, as we've seen in our recent budget, very much focused on the climate and the move and transition across society to decarbonise the economy. And a critical part of that is the whole motor sector. So all of our internal combustions produce quite an element of carbon. The move and transition to electric vehicles helps us dramatically reduce that. One of the things with the electric vehicles is they're dependent on the range of the battery, and there have been very significant advances in development in battery technology over the last 5 years, and particularly the last 2 years. And that has increased the range that the battery can actually travel. And I suppose for most people considering their first electric vehicle, there is an anxiety that what if I find myself in the middle of the countryside with no battery and no range. And I suppose to put that in context, the average urban dweller covers about 60 to 70 kilometres a day in terms of their normal driving. The average new electric car being offered on the market today has a range of between 300 and 500 kilometres. So they've certainly got 5 to 7 days charge within their vehicles. So range isn't really something that people need to be anxious about anymore. Okay. Having driven an electric vehicle for the last year, the real lesson to me was you do most of your charging at home at night in the same way as you charge your phone. So you charge overnight, and then you've got the full range available. So you're not dependent on finding public charging points. That's really a last resort if one is on extensive travelling.
Yeah, that's great to hear because, anecdotal evidence or talking to friends and family, it always comes up, range anxiety. I wouldn't make that purchase, but what you're saying is journeys are short, people charge their cars at home, and battery technology is always improving. Ranges are getting longer and greater. And, we briefly spoke earlier on about battery technology and the ability, to hold power and hold charge. And you're just going to mention how the car can sort of help there in terms of storing power at home.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the theme today is smart technologies, and one of the smart technologies that's about to be rolled out across the whole country is the smart meter. So the domestic electricity meter in each house is going to be converted to a new smart meter. And that is going to give the electricity supply the opportunity to monitor much more closely what is actually being used and what power is being used on a house-by-house basis and at what time it's being used. And if you just step back from that, at the moment we can produce quite a lot of our electricity for the country with wind power. But the problem is the wind blowing at the right time that we need our power? The benefit of batteries is that if everybody had a domestic battery in their house linked to their new smart meter, then we could store power in the domestic batteries when the wind blows and use it and consume it from our batteries when we need it, and only go to the grid when we've run out of battery power. Where does the car come into that? The quickest way that we can actually get domestic batteries available would be actually to interact with the car battery. So back to what I was saying earlier on, if your car battery can store 5 days charge at 6 o'clock in the evening, you've got plenty of capacity available in your car. Your house could draw from your car to boil the kettle, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, when electricity isn't required, refill the battery in your car. So that technology is coming, and the smart meter will be able to interact with your car and to optimize when it's drawing from the car and when it's drawing from the grid. So that technology is going to be a major advancement. And if you fast forward a couple of years, where we have 500,000 cars driving around with batteries, that gives Ireland a tremendous battery bank at its mobile availability.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yesterday we had Cubic Telecom on, and they were discussing, how car parts are communicating with the car and the car communicating with the manufacturer, and being able to bring that back into the residential environment, where you have the toaster communicating with the kettle and the fridge. And now we'll have a system where hopefully where the house is now, the appliances are communicating with the house in terms of their consumption.
That's right.
And then the house is making that decision based on what's available and where it's available. It could be in the car,
Absolutely.
so it's drawing from the car, which is it's unbelievable.
A tremendous advancement.
Yeah, and it's very futuristic, but I think
very real.
But very real
very
as well.
imminent.
Yeah, and I think COVID has accelerated. It may not be directly linked to COVID, but COVID I think has accelerated. A lot of research and a lot of technologies there. So it's definitely going to be a very exciting time and exciting space. Sorry for doorstepping you earlier on.
No problem.
I just thought it was a natural fit to get your insight into cars, car technology, and charging or range anxiety. So Gerard O'Farrell, thank you very much for dropping in this afternoon. So we'll continue on with our themed event, which is Innovation in Smart Health and Smart Energy. I'm delighted to welcome Professor Martin Curley. Professor Martin Curley is Digital Director Transformation, or Director Digital Transformation HSC. He is recognised as a global thought leader in open innovation, European CTO of the year 2015. Professor Martin Curley's strong experience in advanced IT delivery innovation in multiple domains makes him a much sought after speaker on technology, innovation and entrepreneurship. Recent accomplishments include a successful digital transformation of the Irish healthcare system to deliver better health outcomes and stimulate significant economic growth. So I'm delighted to welcome Professor Martin Curley, who will discuss Innovation 2.0.
Great. Conor, thank you for the kind introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a privilege to present. I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about Open Innovation 2.0 as a new methodology for digital innovation or digital transformation. And as I looked at the video from Sandyford Business District, I think Sandyford Business District is already a brilliant example of Open Innovation 2.0 at work. But to make it real, I want to show how we've been using this methodology to digitally innovate in response to COVID-19. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So the digital transformation function was founded about a year ago, and what we have done is create a new digital innovation pipeline. Typically, IT change at the HSE has been very slow and cumbersome, and taking it multiple years for digital changes to be implemented. Well, we've created a new digital innovation pipeline using the principles of Open Innovation 2.0, and I'll share some of those with you later on. If we could have the next slide, please. So we have a 10-year roadmap to take Ireland from being a digital health laggard in Europe to a digital health leader. The OECD published an excellent report last year, Healthcare in the 21st Century, and basically it said that healthcare was on average about a decade behind most other industries in adopting digitization. And also the data in the report showed that Ireland was several years behind actually mainstream Europe in terms of adoption of digital health techniques. Our goal is to be a European digital health leader in 5 to 7 years, but through COVID, we might accomplish that a little bit earlier. If we go to the next slide, please. So I want to give you a whistle-stop tour of our digital transformation strategy before I talk about Open Innovation 2.0. There are 5 things that we're working on, and they work hopefully as a virtuous circle. We have a digital academy, and we co-designed and co-deliver a new master's in digital health transformation, and all 8 professors from all 8 universities in Ireland have been involved in the design of that, but also in the delivery. We're currently open for application, so anybody's listening to that, I'd encourage you to apply at hscdigitaltransformation.ie. And so far, we have 400 expressions of interest for 50 places, so competition will be quite hot. We manage a portfolio of about 50 digital innovations, and we're managing them through 4 different phases from idea to broad adoption. And I'll share some examples of that in the presentation. We have a digital innovation strategy called Stay Left, Shift Left. I'll talk about that in two slides ahead of this. And we've also created a new fora, which is kind of like TED Talks for digital health, called the Digital Academy Fora, where we share, spread and solutionize on new ideas. So if we go to the next slide, please. And then the next slide. So this is a pictogram of our digital innovation strategy. It's very simple. It's called Stay Left, Shift Left, but because of its simplicity, we have got sort of tremendous pickup from the ecosystem. So we're using this to orchestrate the national digital health ecosystem. And this is a key characteristic of Open Innovation 2.0, where there is a shared vision that all elements of the quadruple helix, and that by that I mean government, industry, academia, and citizens or patients participate in. When you have a core principle of Open Innovation 2.0, when you have a shared vision that is shared amongst the 4 elements of the quadruple helix, you can drive structural changes far beyond the scope of changes that can be accomplished by any one organization or individual on its own. The strategy is very simple. Stay Left is about allowing people who are well to stay well in their homes, or if you happen to have a chronic condition, that you can be managed best of all at home. Shift Left is about moving people as quickly as possible from an acute setting to a community setting to a home setting. One very good example of this, which I'll elaborate on a little bit more, is remote monitoring of COVID-19 patients. Initially, if you had COVID, you were automatically hospitalized. But in the space of 3 weeks, we went from an idea to a solution that was being prescribed by our hospitals, in that a patient, if they had mild or moderate symptoms, was sent home and remotely monitored from their home using an app and a Bluetooth-enabled pulse oximeter. But more on that a little bit later. If we could move to the next slide, please. So Open Innovation 2.0 is what we call the new mode for digital innovation. And basically, we have all the actors working together, and there's a new primordial soup, which consists of digital assets, is connected by digital assets and allows the creation of new digital outputs. If anybody's interested in more detail, I published a piece in Nature a couple of years ago on Open Innovation 2.0, and there's also a book I published with a colleague from the Commission, Brewer Salmon. And so let me give you a case study of how the HSE has responded to COVID-19 using this methodology. So if we go to the next slide, please.
So there's a fine book published by Larry Downs and Paul Nunes a couple of years ago called Big Bang Disruption. And this talks about the normal adoption cycle of a product or service being significantly compressed and the adoption happening as a big bang. And I believe we've witnessed this quite a few times now in the HSE, where programs normally would have taken 2 to 5 years. We were actually able to implement them in a matter of 3 to 4 weeks. So if we go to the next slide, please. This was an example of our digital transformation pipeline. We have 4 phases: exploration, proof of concept, demonstrator, and then broad adoption. So this was a newly established group. So this is what the pipeline looked like around February. If you move to the next slide. So after the first wave of COVID, so this is probably a snapshot from about June. This is what our pipeline looked like. We had many more proof of concepts. We had more demonstrators, but most importantly, we had a number of applications and solutions that were broadly adopted. And I'm going to talk about some of those examples. So the next one, please. So we opened up a solutions portal and we looked for solutions, and we had big companies, small companies, academics submit ideas to the portal for digital transformation, and we'll give some examples of these now. Next slide. Probably one of the ones we're most proud of is our remote management of COVID-19, and this is the home monitoring solution. And at its peak, we had about 1,000 patients being remotely monitored from home. When we talk about stay left, shift left, we're looking for 4 characteristics of change. We're looking for improved quality of care, reduced cost, improved quality of life, and improved clinician experience. And I'm delighted to say for this app, we hit all 4 of those criteria. We announced this. I was giving a talk at the IIEA, I think in March, and I presented the working prototype of this app with the pulse oximeter. And within 2 weeks, we were prescribing that solution to patients in different hospitals. And we went from idea to the solution being prescribed in over 30 hospitals and assessment hubs in 5 weeks. So we were able to move very quickly. Normally that process would have taken about 2 years. If we move to the next slide, please. A simple innovation, but a very important one, was the use of non-contact digital infrared thermometers. So we moved quickly on these, and we were able to introduce about 10,000 of these thermometers into the healthcare network. And they were important because they minimize contact between the nurse and the patient, which reduce contamination risk. But importantly, they turned out to be 1/5 of the cost of the standard total cost of ownership compared to the existing thermometers that were being used across the healthcare system. And we see this as a characteristic of digital. Very often we see a 10x improvement in capability or a 10x reduction in cost. In this case, it was 5x, but it was very significant. Next slide, please. In the very early days of COVID, we mobilized quickly with a company called RedZync from the Digital Hub. And, weeks and weeks ahead of, Teams and Zoom being commonplace in the healthcare environment, we were using the Blue Eye Direct video service to allow consultants, have appointments with mental health patients, and also St. James's Hospital. This is the core solution that they're using. And the beauty of this, it's just a text that is sent to an older person or whoever, and I just click on the text, and without any application, secure 2-way video link is created. So this has been pretty effective. Next slide, please. So it wasn't commonplace for doctors to have video consultations, or GPs to have consultations with the regular patients. In a period of 48 hours, in the very early days of COVID-19, we worked with 2 companies, Wallola and Newa Health Solutions, and in 2 days they had actually stood up 2 patient communication portals. We went live with them, and within another 48 hours, we had over 600 GPs and clinics signed up on both platforms. So we went from zero adoption to a big bang adoption in 4 days. Next slide, please. The next innovation wasn't a technical innovation. It was already possible to send a prescription electronically, but unfortunately it wasn't legal. So we pulled together together with the Department of Health, HSE Digital Transformation, pulled together a couple of meetings with key stakeholders. So the IPU, the Pharmacy Union, the ICGP, the Irish College of General Practitioners, and also one of the big suppliers, Clanwilliam. And very quickly we converged on the solution that we had to enable electronic prescriptions. So some secondary legislation was introduced in the Dáil, and on the first day, we had just a handful of prescriptions transferred electronically. But by day 3, we were seeing a volume of about 10,000 prescriptions being transferred electronically. And this is another example of big bang adoption. And it was very important. So people didn't have to handle a piece of paper that potentially could have been contaminated with COVID-19, and it could all be done electronically. If we could move to the next slide, please. Another solution that was developed very quickly is a solution called Accord, and this was designed over a weekend in Beaumont Hospital. I had the privilege to be in with 4 or 5 respiratory clinicians that designed this application, and essentially it was to allow both expert and non-expert consultants and hospital doctors manage patients with COVID-19. And essentially it was developed at the time we were all seeing the horror pictures coming in from Lombardy, and it allowed predict 12 hours in advance which patients would need ICU care. The solution is adopted in 6 hospitals, but it's currently been held in reserve in case we get an escalation of hospital cases of COVID-19. Next slide, please. A real breakthrough technology, a disruptive technology that we deployed is from an Irish company called PMD Solutions, RespiraSense. And this has been deployed in Beaumont and Cork University Hospital, and it's been revolutionary. One of the measurements that are most often wrong are manual respiration rates conducted by nurses. And in our study in Beaumont, it showed that over 80% of the manual respiration rates were incorrect. But much more importantly, during the COVID-19 period, having this sensing technology on patients, significantly reduced the need for PPE and to have nurses continuously checking on patients. And we also were able to see predict about 12 hours in advance which patients were going to deteriorate and potentially need ICU or intubation. So we're looking to try and get the solution implemented nationally now. We've gone from a pilot to a demonstrator very quickly. Next slide, please. One thing I want to say, and this is Open Innovation 2.0 in practice, even though we were innovating heavily for COVID-19, we also got on with some of the core business. So we set up a network of HSE digital labs, which I'll talk to you about in a second. But each of our innovations goes through 4 phases: an exploration phase, a pilot phase, a demonstrator phase, and then a broad adoption phase. And these correspond to the 4 levels of clinical trials. You will have heard people talk about, the vaccines moving to, level 3, clinical trials and so on. But we have the same for digital solutions. And if we move to the next slide, please. One of the key concepts in our digital labs is the concept of a living lab. And I think what Sandyford Business District actually is a really good exemplar of a living lab, and is a key feature of Open Innovation 2.0. A living lab is a user-centered open innovation ecosystem and environment, often operating in a territorial context like Sandyford, and really impressive numbers in terms of the amount of Fortune 500 companies that are located there and the number of employees. A living lab is about integrating concurrent research and innovation processes. And this is achieved within the context of a public-private people partnership context. Next slide, please. So last week we were very pleased to announce publicly 10 new living labs spread across the country, from Sligo to Cork to Roscommon to Wexford to Cavan to Dublin. One of the ones we're most proud of is our vital signs automation living lab in Cavan, and that has recently moved from, or is moving from, a proof of concept to a demonstrator. One of the most important things that is used to monitor a patient when they're in hospital is something called the NEWS, the National Early Warning Score. This is something that is measured and manually calculated by a nurse, and there's about 49 opportunities for error in that score. And when we've done the analysis, about 50% of the NEWS scores are incorrect. So can you imagine running a factory where 50% of your main KPI for your product is inaccurate? Well, unfortunately, that is what happens today in Irish hospitals through no fault of the nurses. And what we've been able to do is implement a vital signs automation that takes those errors to zero. So what we're now doing is making sure all of the wards in Cavan General Hospital are running this technology, and we hope to make the business case for broad adoption across the network. So I'm almost finished. I'm conscious of the time. If we could just move to the next slide, please. So one of the living labs that we're working on at the moment is to create a COVID-19 health passport. And here are some screenshots. We're working with a company called Roku, who have been developing, who have been testing using rapid antigen testing. And Ireland is quite a ways behind in terms of using rapid antigen testing, but the adoption of that is a decision for the clinicians and consultants. But I'm delighted to hear today that NEFIT has stood up a working group to see what we should do around rapid antigen testing. But this application is something that you would download to your phone, and another person can actually scan the QR code to give your status. I conducted, or a live test was conducted on me a couple of weeks ago, a rapid antigen test. The results were available in 15 minutes, and you can imagine how revolutionary this could be if it is adopted in Ireland. Germany have purchased 9 million of these a month. The US have spent 790 million on rapid antigen testing, and countries like Italy and France are adopting them. So hopefully it won't be too long before Ireland adopts them. But in the US rollout was bedogged because they didn't have a digital platform, but we're hoping to have a digital platform in place before the rapid antigen tests get rolled out. So next slide, please. Another living lab that we've had that's been proved quite effective is mobile X-ray for nursing homes and private homes. So instead of bringing a patient to a hospital where there could be a risk of COVID-19 contamination and having them wait for 6 or 7 hours on X-ray and results, the X-ray machine is brought to their home or their nursing home, and it has proved a very effective use case. So we're hoping that we might be able to broaden this from a pilot to a demonstrator. If we just go to the next slide, and I'll try and wrap then. One area that we've been progressing as well is the use of ultraviolet cleaning. We currently have a proof of concept living lab in Tullamore General Hospital, and the early trials from here and from the proof of concept in the Mater Hospital is it's extremely effective in killing COVID-19, and it's also extremely effective at killing MRSA and other superbugs. So just to summarize, Open Innovation 2.0 is a new methodology. We've kind of pioneered it with the European Commission and developed sort of key practices and principles. The HSE is a leading exponent of Open Innovation 2.0. I think Sandyford Business District, without actually really recognizing it was doing Open Innovation 2.0, is a great exponent of it, and the results seem to be very significant. We have a single integrated digital strategy, stay left, shift left, which the whole ecosystem have got behind, and we've been able to deliver some extraordinary results in a very short space of time. I would mention it's not easy because most management organizations are designed to be resistant to change. And Eric Topol, he's a renowned cardiologist, and he talks about medicine being extremely resistant to change. So we've had to use some guerrilla tactics to actually get some of these innovations across the line. We use the Nike mantra, just do it. So we look for forgiveness than seek permission, because if we'd sought permission, we certainly wouldn't have got some of these innovations across the line. So I wish Sandyford Business Park, our business district, all the best, and look forward to continuing collaboration. Thank you.
Professor Martin Curley, thank you very much. It's clear and very obvious that the HSE is undergoing huge transformation. Some really valuable insights you gave us. So we hope you can remain with us and deal with some questions and answers at the end of the session. Next up we have Dudley Stewart. Dudley is Managing Director of Microelectricity Generation Association and a founding member of the Microelectricity Generation Association. Dudley has a demonstrated history of working in renewables and the environment industry. In the mid-70s, he founded one of the first ever dedicated renewable energy companies in Ireland and drove the development of modern wind turbine blade design and governing systems. So you're very welcome, Dudley. Dudley, I've done your introduction and your bio, so if it's okay with you, you can take it away.
Thank you all for having me here. So a quick reminder of the key facts. Ireland is a high-tech agriculture economy, and it's highly dependent on imported energy from far-off places. And Ireland's electricity system ranks amongst the most dependable and reliable. In fact, the quality of our electricity system is at the heart of our successful Irish economy. In COVID-19 and climate change are the big issues of our times. Both have been shown to be interlinked. Nonetheless, right now, Europe has set the very challenging objective of reaching near zero carbon economy by 2050. The number one challenge has been a huge success. That is the large-scale harvesting of energy from sun directly to solar PV or indirectly to wind, water and ocean. The challenge for citizens and digital power now today is to direct, shape and convert this energy and to improve its use, efficient use, and to get to where it's needed, when it's needed. This means essentially squeezing power through the complex twists and turns of the labyrinth, which is the typical urban electricity and gas distribution system. The EU mission is to move progressively towards as many energy cities as possible. Positive energy cities, starting with positive energy blocks and pushing this out to districts. Positive energy systems and strong microgrids will be the energy stabilizers in the evolving energy transition. And they'll help us when we have communications breakdowns too. Clearly, the old siloed, centralized energy system is quite naturally falling away. We are seeing the emergence of an increasingly more complex and intertwined energy system. There are signs of emerging energy anarchy already in some parts of the USA. This is dangerous. Citizens and digital power offer the means, however, of regulating and streamlining this new energy system and keeping it safe. I hope here to highlight our view of the challenges ahead in achieving of the near zero carbon Europe. We have come to the point now where digital technology is ready and acceptable as the key way forward. Digital power in the informed hands of citizens as prosumers is the other key. Another new advance is the emergence of the EU frontline citizen energy community. That's the citizen energy community as the key digital tech enabler, working with the electricity system to restore and maintain stability throughout the crucial years of the energy transition ahead. Again, over the past decade, the key emphasis has been on two significant movements. These days, both are driven mostly by large corporations and government, mostly, I say. Conquest of renewable energy harvesting, and again, the digital technology innovation. Renewable energy harvesting has been focused on achieving critical economies of scale with digital technology breakthroughs in design, materials, testing, reliability, lifespan, and scale. Rising levels of renewable energy penetration have created increasing complexity to the grid, rising intermittency and predictability issues, the sheer volume of new power generation installations, varying in size, location, design, and diversity in source, differing in ownership and control models. All of these are combining to cause serious grid stability and capacity issues. The pressures to increase installing renewables in the absence of appropriate change to the grid and the way it works will cause system operators to pause grid connections of clean energy sources. Missing this digital moment would upset national plans or put at risk the grid itself. Meanwhile, the digital technology revolution is heralding breakthroughs in scale and innovation. This is driving sophistication in the automation of buildings and residential dwelling. Cloud-based control systems can already simultaneously switch on and off vast numbers of loads. These innovations and the scale of deployment bring considerably more challenges to the power system stability. Great things are possible through cloud technology, but a greater understanding of grid stability requirements is needed as social media giants move towards this space. The new EU energy communities offer new ways of moderating and regulating the grid, forming well-organised and resourced EU-style energy communities as local enterprises is challenging, but serious resources from the EU are now coming through to assist through the Green New Deal. The experience in Europe is that such communities can be the moderators and contributors in favour of grid stability, and also providers of the needed growth in flexibility. This is the new digital technology opportunity and challenge of our times, and we need to harness the momentum towards solutions that are mutually beneficial for both users and the operators. Clear examples of these new possibilities can be evidenced from the Dublin-located Tala Smart Grid Testbed. Initiated by South Dublin County Council with MEGA in 2009, this living lab has shown how digital communication technologies can empower local communities, acting as smart grid cells, stabilising the grid and allowing ever-increasing levels of diverse distributed clean energy solutions through disturbance-neutral community grids. Huge efforts are focused on the new power system architecture. Whatever the solution, the result must be highly robust, dependable, quality assured, resilient in adverse conditions. Basically, a new smart grid system must do what it's meant to do. It must enable near zero carbon electricity. It must do this while always preventing harm to the system. Electricity grids are fast becoming digitally smarter. It is widely agreed that the new resilient smart grid must be made up of a mesh of intertwined microgrid systems. Microgrids are easier to manage, involve citizens as organised prosumer communities, and invest heavily in energy storage and flexibility. Flexibility to adapt consumption as much as possible to available power, power from generators, batteries alike, and also from motor vehicles, as said earlier. The benefits of a grid based on intermesh microgrids would be huge. Production could be contained, stored, converted or consumed within the microgrid in line with the needs of other parts of the grid to export or import. Severity of impact from cyber attacks and viral rolling blackouts could be significantly reduced by managing islanding of selected microgrids and more. Migrating to the more ideal intermeshed microgrid system on time to stay in front of adverse developments is a clear need of current times. The current quest: is there a way of using the benefits of intermeshed microgrids in a more gradual and reward-driven way to stimulate the speed up of this migration? In Ireland, Empower is currently developing candidate microgrids made of willing prosumers within the physical remit of future microgrid boundaries. Following the IEA award in 2019, these have become known globally as community grids. Empower in Ireland is actively developing community grids. The natural boundary of a community grid is the medium voltage substation. Empower works with prosumers locally inside these boundaries, enabling through a regulated system a set of digital technologies willing prosumers to work together to achieve local disturbance neutrality. Disturbance neutrality is assured by a combination of digital technology and compliance with power quality rules regulated by contract. Empower has developed a full system to implement, operate and maintain community grids, which are effectively smart grid cells. Empower is developing the first disturbance-neutral energy communities and is progressing with the process to become the first licensed community system operator. Such communities respond autonomously with a minimal or no interaction with the distribution system operator to disturbances from production, storage, and flexibility created by energy prosumers. Moving on now to the anatomy of a community grid cell. The backbone of a community grid is a network of SLUs. These are 1 second interval prosumer smart meter controls, very fast. These are linked by high redundancy machine-to-machine communications networks, linked to the local server at the local energy hub and supported by the Energy Exchange control and trading system. With disturbance neutrality assured by the community grid stabilizer, equipped for ultra-fast uptake through ultracapacitors and emergency power dissipators. Ireland's first EU Lighthouse Smart City is located in Limerick. It's deploying community grid systems to form EU-style positive energy districts. Digital technology and energy community systems developed first on Tallaght Smart Grid testbed are being refined and embedded in the heart of Limerick City. This is together with Dublin, the Aran Islands, Trondheim and other EU cities. The new energy community-based digital technology power of community grids is underway with positive engagement from both energy regulator and the electricity system. Community grids are one of the new ways forward through the new enlightened power of both communities and digital technology. How do I play that vid? Can we play the video?
Today we are very excited because we are launching in Limerick the first European Lighthouse Smart City project called City Exchange. With this project we are aiming to develop solutions for the creation of positive energy cities. A positive energy city is in fact a city that generates more energy than it actually consumes. We are going to start at a block level with 5 buildings and then try to replicate this across additional blocks.
The Georgian neighbourhood, which is where the pilot programme is focused, was built 250 years ago on an intelligent grid system. So we aim to repurpose that logic of the Georgian neighbourhood into a new type of energy system, a community energy grid where collectively people can share and exchange energy between buildings and between buildings and vehicles.
What attracts us to the Positive City Exchange project is that decarbonisation in an urban and a city sector is going to be a real challenge if we're going to meet our climate change goals. So for us, we're going to learn the impact of deploying those technologies and what do we need to be doing to facilitate that.
Today is indicative of what Limerick has been doing for the last number of years. It has been leading out on innovation, it has been disrupting the market. So this is bringing how do you energise and make maximum efficiencies in old buildings. And if we crack it here in Limerick, for Europe and for the globe, I think we'll be on a winner, and this is where Limerick is leading out.
Thank you very much. So over to questions. I'm in your hands.
Dudley Stewart, Managing Director, Microelectricity Generation Association. Thank you very much. We'll just ask you to remain with us for another 20 minutes or so, and we'll deal with questions and answers at the end of the session. Next up, we have Oisin Kim, CEO and co-founder of WebDoctor. Oisin is a dad to Rian and Quaylon and husband to Amanda. Oisin is a self-obsessed geek, CEO and co-founder of WebDoctor, Ireland's leading telemedicine service, and hashhealth.com, one of Europe's leading telemedicine platforms. Before we have a chat to Oisin, we're just going to play another video.
The Sandyford Business District is Ireland's premier business location. Sandyford hosts 13 Fortune 500 companies and some of the world's leading names, including Microsoft, MasterCard, Sage, Vodafone, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, and numerous other global and national brands. The district has a thriving cluster culture in technology, fintech, medtech, autotech, retail, and hospitality. There are over 1,000 businesses operating in the 4 business parks that make up the Sandyford Business District. One of the key roles of the Sandyford Business District Company is to promote inward investment, attracting both foreign direct and indigenous investment to secure global and national businesses. With over 50,000 square metres of office space currently under construction and major projects in planning and development, the district is ideally placed to accommodate companies of all sizes. The Business Attraction Task Force engages regularly with state agencies, the IDA and Enterprise Ireland, and engages regularly with property agents and commercial property consultants to showcase and promote the district. Sandyford has an enviable record of attracting global players. Recent lettings include MasterCard opening its new technology hub for Europe in the LEED certified development at 1 and 2 South County, employing over 1,500 people in 22,500 square metres of office space. Facebook has recently moved into 16,000 square metres of offices in the atrium, Sandyford Business Park, while AIB moved into the 8-storey Block H in Central Park with over 14,000 square metres of premium grade office space. To find out more about how Sandyford Business District is helping attract investment, contact us. Sandyford Business District, working together.
Oisin, great to have you. I've just gone through your introduction. Your family have got a shout out as well, so I'm sure they'll be very happy. So I look forward to doing the Q&A with you at the end, but firstly you're going to go through digital health first.
Sure, thanks. So thanks for giving me this opportunity. I have some slides. I'm not sure if they're going to be displayed. Yeah. So basically I'm a co-founder of WebDoctor and Newer Solutions. Interestingly, Professor Curley mentioned the resistance to change in accepting technology in medicine. And I used this picture to soften up the audience when I was talking to clinicians to show that it was human after all, because we experienced great friction and great resistance to change when we first launched our telemedicine services. And to give you an idea, as a business, we power basically software platforms that enable telecare, like WebDoctor, like Care on Call, and like Has Health. We actually provide the clinical services as well for WebDoctor and Care on Call. So we've built our platform, built our software based on what's actually needed in the real world, and we've done that over the last 7 years. In terms of the problem that we originally tried to fix, today, most EHRs and most systems that record patient data, really, and digital data are effectively digital filing cabinets. They don't make any improvements in the performance in terms of the efficiency or the safety of the patients that are stored there. And as another example, the script that you see there on the right-hand side is actually a real prescription presented to a pharmacist, and it's literally impossible to ascertain what is actually on the script. So there are some real issues with the platforms that clinicians have to use today, and we decided to take a data-driven approach. We wanted to optimize clinical communication. We wanted to enable telecare and care, basically. We set ourselves audacious goals of be 10 times more efficient than the existing systems. We tried to capture more data to make sure that the data that we captured was structured, that it was secure, using the same level of security that banks and telecoms would have used for their systems. And last and most importantly, we wanted to bring the software to the patient and make our platforms truly patient-centric. And because for ourselves, the democratization of the patient's data is what enables progress and enables all these efficiencies. We believe the patient owns their data, they control it. And as a result, basically, we allow the patient to contribute in new ways. So the title of this talk is Digital First Health. And for our systems, all patients will book and apply and engage with clinicians first through digital means. And this was completely different how things were done pre-COVID. Generally, you would deal with an appointment with your GP or your clinician. You would book an appointment over the telephone or in person, and you would go and see them face to face. Today, COVID has changed that, and everybody is now digital first. Everybody is now working on telephone screeners and digital screeners before they see their clinicians in person, if they do at all. And our goal really on this was really to make it easy to do the right thing and make it hard to make mistakes. Our progress to date basically is that we launched, as I mentioned, in 2016, a telemedicine service called webdoctor.ie. We launched it in just the end of November. We basically built that service and deployed that clinical service because we knew nobody would be interested in licensing our software unless we were able to prove and show that it was there was a demand for it, that it was safe and that it worked, etc., and it was efficient. We quickly won the Leia Healthcare deal in terms of we provide the Leia Healthcare's Care on Call platform. And we then worked on licensing that software out to the market and to other providers, both here in Ireland and across Europe. Finally, I think this is something that Professor Curley mentioned, we started to expose and offer this software to smaller clinic groups and clinics and clinicians themselves, and that's our Has Health offering. And that progress has taken us through the number of years, but there's been a huge acceleration in the last 12 months. So I'm a great fan of Randy Pausch, who's a Carnegie Mellon computer science lecturer who passed away a number of years ago. And he has lots of kind of famous sayings. And one of his sayings is, when there's an elephant in the room, introduce them. And for me, when it comes to digital first and data, the elephant in the room is GDPR. And basically, GDPR gives the patient certain rights and certain privileges, and one of them is portability. You're entitled as a patient to have a structured, commonly used and machine-readable format of your data, not just from a clinician, but from any provider that stores your data. We took that to a new level, and there are existing systems and technologies to enable that type of share. And we basically wanted to ensure that the patient was at the center of this. And in our case, we basically looked at something called Open Notes. And Open Notes basically is it's a campaign, and it's basically a developing process, I guess, I think it's what describe it, that's worldwide, started in Israel and in the US, where patients get full access to their clinical notes. And as part of that, there are things that basically that improve healthcare. There are things there that empower the patient. And I'd like to give you some examples of why. So first of all, people are just too busy to do everything they're supposed to do. So we find that basically when a patient is given a set of tasks to complete by their clinician, they'll typically remember a couple of them and they'll forget one or two. And that's just one of the examples. Another one is that people don't always look at the instructions and read the instructions and do what they're told. So they need a place that they can return to find out what was the advice that was given by their clinician. And lastly, and most importantly, people make mistakes. There's a fantastic study here, which I'm happy to share the links of, where over 135,000 patients were surveyed, and 1 in 5 who looked at the notes that were recorded about them and about their consultations noted what they perceived as a serious mistake in the notes provided or completed by their clinicians. And when you look at the paper and you see the most common issues were mistakes in diagnosis, medical history, medications, the physical exam results, the test results, sometimes the notes were on the wrong patient, and sadness. And it's worth mentioning here that Dr. Sylvester Mooney, our clinical director, would always say that when it comes to medicine, 85% of any diagnosis is based on the information, on the history, on the recording of a good, solid history. So that's the end of my slides, and that's really just an overview of what we've done, and I hope that gives people a flavour of things.
That's great, Oisín. Thank you very much. I'll just invite Dudley Stewart back as well, and we'll do a Q&A. Just pose this one to you, Oisín. I suppose one of the last points was patients identifying mistakes, which is I suppose it's a great option to have for patients to be able to review their own reports and identify human error. That's probably saved, a number of lives maybe, and it's probably more efficient in terms of the patient care pathway. Would that be right?
Absolutely. And I think there's a couple of things there. I think the first one is there was a very interesting study in Scotland which showed that patients were more likely to tell the truth to a bot, a questionnaire online, than to a human. And this was a decent sized study. In our case, what it allows us to do is to make sure that there is 100% consistency across all patients, so that there's a standardized clinical questionnaire which is provided by our clinical directors, and patients provide all that information before they see any patient, any GP, etc. And it just allows us to be a little bit more efficient with the time and allow the clinician to focus on the issue at hand with all that information pre-collected. The study was quite comprehensive in terms of the numbers, and it was 20% of patients did find a mistake that they felt was meaningful. And those types of mistakes can have impacts to the treatment plan and medicines that you take.
Yeah, 20% is high, but after all, we're all human. I'd be more inclined to sugarcoat the truth a lot less, filling out a form, instead of eyeball to eyeball with somebody. So just Dudley, if I can bring you in, just in terms of electricity generation, am I right in saying I can generate electricity in my own property through various different means, but any over-generation of power, I cannot sell it back to the grid?
Yeah, well, it's quite natural in the sense as we've evolved to the place where we are now, we're having more and more renewables connected to the grid, and any type of generator that connects to the grid will create a disturbance in the grid. So if you have a lot of machines spitting out into the grid, they are challenging for the distribution system operator, and they can disturb neighbours' power and that kind of stuff. So yeah, so that's where the microgrids come in, and that's where the work that's ongoing with ESPN in particular, to enable people to export power in such a way as to be disturbance neutral, and even to support the grid. And it's the way to go, really. You know, that the question there of, you know, parking your car at home to charge it, and then maybe having it ready for the grid. If there's a grid emergency, the car can discharge into the grid. These are all very positive things. So yeah, it's a very changing situation at the moment. And again, it's platforms, digital platforms, that are making this possible. But organization between people is becoming crucial. Organization between people on the same street, in the same locale, operating under the same substation transformer. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell, I think.
Okay, it's again, it's another word that's been used throughout this Innovation Week, is organisation or collaboration. And in order for projects to get off the ground, collaboration is needed. Yeah, I'd love to see the day where I can sell the electricity that my property has generated. I can use it to power my devices, my appliances, charge the car, and then maybe sell it to my neighbour, and then, you know, help pay back for the investment on the property. So I've no doubt we will see that day, and it'll be sort of standard practice. But I'm sure it's, as you alluded to, it's probably a little bit of the way off. Just going back to Oisín, COVID, I suppose, look, with many technologies, many industries, it's accelerated growth. It's led companies down a path that they wouldn't have necessarily thought was right for them. And I've no doubt it has just massively increased video consultations.
Absolutely. So I think overnight we've seen a greater than 100% growth. I think in what we have been doing. So what previously was taking us 6-7 months in terms of time to double happened literally overnight, and even more than 100%. The interesting thing is that it's been sustained in that, you know, what we call the COVID surge, where we've seen a very meaningful growth, has continued, and by enabling clinicians to do this with their own patients through Has Health, we've seen that grow even further.
Okay. I'm assuming that GDPR played an issue, and people were reluctant to maybe use that service, the patient and maybe, you know, the clinician as well. But do you think that the video consultations are sustainable? They will continue to grow, you know, as the months, you know, continue, or will there be a retraction where people will like to go back and have that, you know, if it's possible, that physical sort of face-to-face communication with their clinician, where they possibly feel a little bit more comfortable and like to have that chat about other things, you know, other than their condition, I suppose. Will it retract, do you think?
I think there'll be a hybrid approach, and I think even, you know, I think over time I would expect basically that some clinicians will just love the efficiency of it, and love the ability to see more patients in the same time. Some will absolutely prefer to be able to put their hands on a patient and do a physical exam, etc. For ourselves, I think that the key for ourselves is that we want to make sure that all clinicians have the option to do what they want, but also that where the clinician feels it's safe and appropriate and efficient, etc., that they can offer that to patients. And that's something that we've seen. I think the approach we took for Has Health was that we, by default, made the system not require accounts. So that means that there is no real kind of sensitive personal data in the most basic solution, which is just like pure video. So you can set that up without having an account on either side. You can create a video call in about 10 seconds. So it's very similar to creating a call on your phone, etc. So we tried to work as best possible to provide that type of solution. But also the fact that I guess we are an Irish company with an Irish team and Irish support. All of our servers are deployed here in Ireland, etc. Through Microsoft, one of the the Sandyford residents. It provides us with basically a advantage in the Irish market, if that makes sense.
Dudley, just a question for you. SMEs are the backbone of the Irish economy. Do you think microgrid solutions will be the biggest provider of electricity going forward, or will we be reliant on large-scale wind farms and wave generation to provide our power going forward?
Well, it's again a hybrid solution. I think we're going to look to microgrids for basic resilience, getting us through bad times and for basic needs. But I don't think we're going to see microgrids providing for industrial needs in a big way. But what is happening is, as the scale of capturing of solar and wind power is increasing and going offshore, we're seeing power to gas. So we're seeing the new form of gas in syngas and various forms of hydrogen coming in, which will be able to drive new zero carbon generators that will provide for industry. And this is coming really fast at the moment. So yeah, it's going to be a mix. This is the kind of secret to it all: digital power.
Okay, thanks, Dudley. Just one last question, if you can take it, Oisín. It's what services can WebDoctor provide for SMEs during the COVID pandemic?
So hashealth.com is basically a simplified version of what we provide on WebDoctor and other enterprise customers. So it enables any clinician in any domain to do consultations with their own patients over video. It also enables things like online booking and secure messaging. So for SMEs, we've priced that fairly close to cost price, and it enables the clinicians to actually provide a very, very similar service to what we do today.
Okay, thank you, Oisín. I'd like to thank our contributors today. Professor Martin Curley, Director of Digital Transformation, HSE, Dudley Stewart, Managing Director, Microelectricity Generation Association, and Oisín Kim, CEO and Founder, WebDoctor. Thank you to all of you for your immense contribution today. I'd also like to thank UCD for hosting the event and Creative Technology for powering the event.